Welcome to Advent of Tessellations 2025. My name is Madonna Yoder, and you're joining hundreds of folders around the world on this 25-day journey into the infinite world of repeating patterns folded from a single sheet of paper. You'll discover many different twists in this challenge, building up to advanced patterns with flagstone motifs of trapezoid twists. Welcome back to Advent of Tess. On day 15, we're folding this pattern named In Gear, and the differences from yesterday is that instead of those closed triangle twists, we're using open ones, still at flagstone spacing, and instead of the two-fold mixed depth hexagon twists, we're using mixed depth rhombus twists again, but this time the mixed depth rhombus twists are unfriendly, which is why our trapezoid corner has to be tucked under. So let's go ahead and dive in. I've got my 24-fold triangle grid on a hexagon here, and if you're just popping into this series for the first time, you can find a tutorial on the grid, the papers I recommend, some other tools to make it easier when you sign up at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent. So let's start folding. We're going to start with a closed hexagon twist in the middle, which means that our mountain folds are going to go out to the corner, and on the right hand side the valley fold will be one space above the mountain. We'll do this on all 6 of our corners, and the great thing about closed hexagon twists is that you don't need to mark the center. You just have all of your pleats interact with the corner the same way, and the center finds itself. And I'm leaving the middle of the paper 3D lifted up into the air, and then I'll start to bring my pleats flatter, leaving 2 grid spacings worth of pleat still lifted up in the air. And once I have that closed hexagon tower, I'll bop it. Actually, I'll zoom in for this. Tap the top, bop it, grab it on 3 sides, and give it a sharp twist. It's often going to look like this right after it gets laid down, but we can smooth out any crumpled corners. Notice I was lifting that and using tension to get those crumples out, and smooth everything down with a bone folder. And we'll get a chance to see as soon as we flip it over whether all of our valley folds actually stayed on grid lines. So flipping over, that really tight, tiny hole is what you expect to see if all the valley folds have in fact stayed on their grid lines, which is all of these folds. Next up, we've got the open triangle twists. We're doing 6 of these twists, and the spacing puts the corner of the twist at the closed triangle hole, so my mountain fold will go straight to that hole that is also right along the existing folded mountain. Then my mountain fold will be 1 space away, and since we're doing open triangle twists, we're using our 3rd mountain to outline 1 grid triangle. So I'll put in the new pleat. This is folding a layer over the pleat that's already been folded, and then open the excess of the original pleat to put in the 3rd direction, and then press to squash my open triangle twist. From here, since the next twist is on the opposite side of the paper, I will continue going around clockwise. So the first thing I'll do is lift that covered pleat up, and that's the one I'll use to make the next twist. Then I'll have my new valley fold going straight in to that central hole, and my mountain fold 1 space away, my new mountain in the third direction defines the open triangle twist. And not to worry, once we open up and get rid of the excess of that original pleat, that new mountain is going to pass right under the corner of the previous triangle twist and create a pleat overlap. Once that's in place, we can press everything to squash. Rotating, I'll repeat again, lifting the hidden pleat to the top, putting in a new valley fold along this folded mountain on the lower layer, a new mountain fold on top, and opening the pleat from the hexagon, I'll put in my third direction of pleat around this open triangle twist, and that mountain fold will pass right under the corner of the previous triangle twist. And press to squash. Now I'll repeat that for the next several twists, lifting the hidden pleat, layering our new pleat on top of the next one over, then putting in the third pleat, creating an overlap right at the corner of the previous triangle twist. And rotate and repeat, lift the flap that was tucked under, tuck under a new flap, find the third direction of pleat, and squash. Here, once again, we do need to lift the pleat that was hidden. And like we've done the last 2 days, for this final triangle, we're going to do a compound wrap. So I've got the valley coming from the central hexagon hole. And for the compound wrap, I'm going to open up the pleat down below so that I can put in a 3-way intersection of valley folds right at that point where my valley is meeting this existing folded mountain, which is one space out from this open triangle corner. So I've got that 3-way intersection here and another 3-way intersection of valleys where I hit the valley of the pleat from the first triangle twist. Likewise, I've got these 2 3-way intersections of mountain folds, one space removed from my valley folds. With all of that in place, I can then open up the pleat coming from the hexagon and find my third direction of mountain fold and create the pleat overlap under the previous triangle and squash this open triangle twist. One of the cool things I noticed while we're here is that each individual triangle twist, when it's twisted, has a different orientation of grid lines than the surrounding untwisted areas. But you can see these grid lines continue straight through the whole open triangle area. So that's something cool to look at. Now that we've got all of our triangle twists, I'm going to grab my compound wrap. Actually, I'm going to grab it in my right hand and flip over. And now we have this area where we have 3 spaces between parallel pleats instead of, well, actually, no, we have 4 spaces here instead of 3 in most of the directions and 2 above the compound wrap. So we're working a little bit clockwise from that compound wrap. Now, just like we did yesterday, we're going to put in our open trapezoid twist, and we're going to put it in so that the middle single depth pleat is coming from this lower of the two triangles that are contributing to the pleat overlap. So this triangle right here between these two mountain folds that are coming together is a point of the, you could think of it as a open hexagon puffy star, but we're using that to find our third single depth pleat of the open trapezoid twist. And we're learning by finding that pleat that that is going to be at tube pleat spacing relative to the other pleat down here of the lower of our two triangles. Then that mountain fold from the lower of our two triangles is going to continue out on the same grid line into the double depth pleat. We're going to make sure that valley is tucked in 2 spaces away from our mountain, and we can press our trapezoid twist to squash. Next up, we can take notice that, okay, the valley fold is coming from that corner of the open triangle hole. That valley fold is going to pass through here, and that's the valley of the double depth pleat. So that valley is meeting a single depth pleat, and it's going to make another compound wrap. So we're going to have our 2 three-way intersections of valley folds, and this time we're going 2 grid spacings between our zigzag of valley folds and our zigzag of mountain folds. Because this is a double depth pleat passing through, we need to have those 2 spaces. And we can also find our remaining single depth pleat on this trapezoid twist. We can use the tube pleat spacing that we identified earlier, or we can say, hey, when I open this up, that is a corner of a puffy hexagon setup, and this is another corner, therefore that's where my pleat needs to go. Either way you set it up, like whichever references you use, it still works. And we need the full twist set up in order for our advanced compound wrap to close. So once again, we are folding our trapezoid twists, sticking 2 spaces out past a pleat that theoretically passes under it, which looks surprising until you do it and see that it works. So then I'll repeat those steps on the next interaction of pleats. I'm going to have the valley of my double depth pleat coming right from that open triangle corner, or the corner of the open triangle hole rather, and then it'll make the zigzag and connect to the valley of the single depth pleat from the previous trapezoid. And we will also have the zigzag of mountain folds 2 grid spaces away, and we'll open up and find our third single depth pleat with 2 grid spaces between these parallel mountain folds. And with all of that in place, we can lay the wrap down flat and press from the top to squash. Rotating, I'll do it again, but this time I won't draw on the paper. If you want to see the drawing on the paper, check out the previous 2 iterations of the same step. I'm going to run the valley fold for the double depth plate in and set up the zigzag for the compound wrap. Then I'll open the pleat overlap and find my final single depth pleat and make sure that that zigzag of valleys is matched by a zigzag of mountains up above, and lay all of that down flat and press from the top to squash. So it's a lot of folds going into a single twist, but when you're used to doing these, you can start finding those landmarks and seeing what's needed for the twist, and have your brain basically set that up for you. So that actually that I just saw was an interesting wrinkle that might be tripping you up as well. You might be landing in a situation where your 2 points of the puffy hexagon star want to kind of collapse into a bow tie. For that, I'm going to poke from the back. So I'm using my finger from the back to poke that point out, and that will allow my twist to lay down flat. The other thing I can do is from this side, so if that is tight in there, I can grab the mountain folds on either end and pull, and that will puff back out. And press to squash. For our 6th and final trapezoid twist, we're going to work much the same way with our, nope, not that direction, with our valley fold coming out in this direction from that open triangle corner. Do you want to know how I caught myself? I was like, well, if the valley's there, then this makes a tube pleat, but I haven't noticed a tube pleat before, so it has to be in the other direction. It just looks weird because we're working off of a compound wrap. So opening up, I'm going to let that valley zigzag. It's going to go 1 space on the zig and then out to the edge on the zag. It's hooked up with the valley of the previous trapezoid, and we're going to make a new valley up through here. We're also going to make a new mountain along that grid line, and that is actually going to land close to, but not exactly at, the corner of the twist. Then I'll open up, and I'm pushing from the back to avoid pulling things apart. Opening up that compound wrap and sending my new, or rather my 3rd single depth plate down. And here's where it's helpful to go ahead and do the compound wrap down here right away. So I have this existing valley fold coming in here, and it's going to do the zigzag. This is going to be the valley of my new single depth plate, and corresponding to that zigzag of valley folds, I need a zigzag of mountain folds, 2 grid spacings removed, And we're not going to see this three-way intersection of mountains because this twist has already been squashed. There was a mountain fold there, but we squashed it, and now there are two sides of the trapezoid twist. So with that compound wrap in place, I can go ahead and lay that area of the paper down flat and return to my busy area over here, in which I need to put in that same zigzag of mountain folds. Here's the other mountain I was talking about that got squashed down here. And once we have the compound wrap up above set in place, we can press and squash our final trapezoid twist of the day. Well, final for me. You might be folding another repeat of this. From this point, we're going to flip the paper over, and it doesn't matter how we flip because each of these interactions of pleats is wrapped in exactly the same way. Next up, we are going to fold our unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twists. And to start that process, I'm going to open the compound wrap so that my folds are all laid out nicely. Basically, I'm opening things so that this is 3D and the double depth pleat is coming out straight from the trapezoid. So I'm restoring the pleats around that corner. But coming back, we'll fold it on this side. And for this twist, and this is something you can see in the crease patterns, which you get if you're signed up for the email reminders at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent, and also if you get the Advent of Tess ebook at gatheringfolds.com, origamiusa.org, or origamishop.com. What you can see in there is the guide lines inside of the twists for each day. And what those guidelines are telling me is that for the single depth pleat of this mixed depth rhombus, my mountain is going to jump over one grid spacing. So it's coming in this way. It's going to go out that way. And these arrows are pointing into the twist. So I'll lift up that grid line and start to emphasize that mountain fold. Then my mountain fold for the double depth pleat actually is the exact same grid line as the mountain fold coming out. And there's one thing we need to double check on the back before this gets folded. And well, one thing, this double depth pleat, the mountain fold needs to be 2 spaces away from the valley fold, which is how this is able to form. And the thing to check on the trapezoid side is that we're tucking on top of the trapezoid point. With that established, we can go ahead and squash our new unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twist. And it's kind of a press from the top situation, make sure the corners are in the right place, spread out the squash until it's all in place. The thing we were checking for is that these pleats were in the right order, that we weren't getting stuck here, because that will not fold flat, but this will. So we're going to go around and do that on each of our compound wraps. And I'll do this one slowly again. I'm going to open up and allow that double depth pleat from the trapezoid twist on the other side to continue through straight. Then this mountain of the single depth pleat, I'm going to jump down and continue out to the edge. The mountain of the double depth pleat will continue being a mountain on the far side, with the valley folds on opposite sides of the twist. And the important thing with this valley fold is I'm making sure that this layer is tucking under the corner of the trapezoid twist. So on this side, look what my fingers are doing. I'm making this one tuck under and folding this one on top. And once I'm confident that those folds are correctly layered, then I can press and squash my unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twist. From there, I'll continue around and do the same thing on each of the 6 sides. So I'm opening up my compound wrap, finding the mountain of the new single depth pleat, finding the mountain of the new double depth pleat, making sure things are nice and open in there and that I'm not putting my valleys too far in. Making sure the layering is correct, that this flap with the trapezoid is above this new flap with the valley fold, or rather that the valley fold is wrapping down and around everything else that's there. And then squashing that new mixed depth rhombus twist. Rotating, I'll repeat again, opening up the compound wrap, finding the new single depth mountain fold. I'm noticing that it's really tempting to make this area concave. We want to keep that nice and convex and rounded so that when we do put in our new double depth pleat, it's already good to go. And I'm noticing that the paper is responding better during the squash when I go around and press everywhere gently and only then press hard to get things flat. That's actually kind of a general thing, but the more complicated the twist is, the more likely it'll be necessary. And then I can set up another of these rhombus twists. And you might be wondering, well, couldn't I choose to put in a friendly mixed depth rhombus twist here? But actually, because of the starting setup, the only way that these two pleats, the single depth and the double depth pleats, can be resolved is with this unfriendly mixed depth rhombus. Luckily, the twists on the other side are close enough that they can handle that unfriendliness and accommodate this twist going into place. So that's what's going on with In Gear, today's pattern. And let me show you how this pattern repeats. So interestingly, even though it's an unfriendly mixed depth rhombus, you can fold repeats of it directly from the grid. You can just keep folding like I did, and then you'll have the option of which of these two trapezoids is layered on top and which one's on the bottom, because those rhombus twists function as positions of two-fold rotational symmetry in the broader pattern. Now, if you want to use this hexagon and triangles and trapezoid setup and not have an unfriendly rhombus twist, then another pattern, cogs, is the one for you. The difference between these two patterns is in the orientation of the trapezoid twists. So instead of sending the third direction of single depth pleat down around the center, it sends it out, making a tube between those two nearby pleats. This is actually a pattern that I taught in a previous Advent of Tess in 2023, and you can find both of these patterns in the 2023 ebook as well. Last but not least, we've got the backlighting for today. And yeah, gorgeous spiderwebby backlighting on that. These rhombi really show up on the back side in the backlighting. They don't show up so well on the front. We've got all those lovely triangle holes. But yeah, all of both in gear and cogs can be found in this year's Advent of Tess ebook. There's also a whole series of patterns that I included in Tessellation Academy with the hexagon, triangle, trapezoid start and how to figure out, okay, what can go next? Is it going to be a friendly or unfriendly mixed depth rhombus? Can we put a threefold mixed depth hexagon, a twofold mixed depth hexagon? Is it going to be the skinny or the fat twofold mixed depth hexagon? What are the different ways that we can get these patterns to repeat? That was thoroughly explored in one of the topics this year in Tessellation Academy. And there's a lot more of these kinds of patterns available in Tessellation Garden as well, the collection of all of my crease patterns, currently with over 600 patterns. There's also a sizable coupon code in the Advent of Tess ebooks for Tessellation Garden. So these things can be cumulative. All of these courses and resources can be found at training.gatheringfolds.com, and I encourage you to share what you've folded today. You can tag me at Gathering Folds on Instagram or Facebook, and you can share your photos also on my private Gathering Folds Discord server, which when you sign up for reminders or when you otherwise join my email list, you will get the link to join that private server. So happy folding, everybody. And the Discord server is another great place to ask questions if you need help. I want to just show tomorrow's pattern real quick. It cranks up the difficulty in the spacing. So we only have one space between these pleats instead of two. And we're using closed trapezoid twists instead of open hexagon in the middle instead of closed, but otherwise we get the same kind of thing. And these unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twists show up again. I like to tuck their corners in just for the visual punch of the ring. So that's what's coming up tomorrow, and I'll see you there.